The goal of this presentation is to notify our clients regarding a command injection vulnerability within the DVWA execution directory path's input field. We would like to thereby suggest our findings and subsequent mitigating measures. To briefly introduce the vulnerability, a command injection vulnerability is a security flaw in a system that allows attackers to execute arbitrary commands. This is a critical vulnerability as it could lead to a remote code execution, also known as an RCE, of the target and thereby a total compromise of the system. The CVSS score that the tester calculated was 8.5 with a severity of high. The base CVSS factors that the tester have used to calculate the CVS score can be seen below. For proof of concept, for the security low-level module, the tester was able to manually discover that the input field was vulnerable to command injection with various operators such as the logical AND operator, the pipe operator, and logical OR operator. By simply augmenting the initial IP address with the mentioned operators and any command just as the cat etc password, we were able to retrieve sensitive user data. For the medium and high security levels, after more trial and error, the pipe operator was still vulnerable due to lack of secure coding, especially in that of user input validation and sanitization. To take steps further, the tester was able to successfully gain a remote code execution through a reverse shell using a famous networking tool called SOCAT. The tester first created a netcat listener and supplemented the input field with an operator followed by a SOCAT reverse shell connection command. As seen below, the tester was granted a full command line interface shell offering complete control over the compromised system. To automate and streamline the process, the tester has developed a Python script that finds command injection vulnerability within the DVWA website and proceeds to establish an RCE. For mitigating measures, to mitigate command injection attacks, we suggest that developers of the DVWA ensures effective user input validation and sanitization. User input validation is basically verifying whether a user input satisfies the condition established by the developer, and there are primarily two approaches to input validation, namely blacklist-based approach and whitelist-based approach. Blacklist-based approach, by its naming, is understood as checking if the user input is within the blacklist. However, this method is rather susceptible to human errors, as exemplified in the security high-level module, and is therefore not recommended. The whitelist-based approach is basically checking if the user input satisfies a predefined list of whitelists. For example, in the security impossible level, the developers have verified that the user input is an alphanumeric string and the form of an IP address consisting of 4 octets. The last method that we suggest is user input sanitization. User input sanitization is basically removing potentially harmful elements from the input data. There are various techniques in this sanitization process, such as escaping characters, filtering, and whitelisting. There are also various built-in functions that we recommend that the DVWA developers actively utilize. That ends the presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So we are a bank, by the way, in heaven. By the way, so we don't really have that many developers, like in-house developers in our team, right? So based on the mitigations, like I kind of understand the conceptual, or I'm sorry, I kind of understand the concept of the mitigations that you kind of listed out, but I have like no idea how to implement this, right? Like as of right now, like these are something that I can probably Google up, or Google or just ask ChatGPT. But in terms of actually fixing the issue, would it be possible to provide us with some kind of a code example or at least a reference for the future?
Yeah, sure. So by looking at the various security measure source code that we identified, there was the blacklist-based approach for the low and medium and high. I think implementing that alongside with input sanitation, which was in the impossible security source code, if you combine those methods, it would be really secure. And I don't think that requires a lot of I don't think it requires a lot of human resources, and I think that's really cost effective. So I can definitely provide you with the source code required necessary. Yeah.
Cool. And would it be okay for me to expect that for your future pen test reports as well?
Yeah, definitely. Next time, I will try to implement the source code as well as mitigating measures so that you guys could implement it right away.
Alright, thank you. 네, 피드백도 같이 드렸고요. I, I do have another question though. So
Yes.
this is like a really important application for us, right? This is a banking web application. So there's a reason why we run this inside of Docker. So I thought Docker is like a container technology that isolates everything. So like what I understand is even if there is an attacker trying to, execute code or command inside this application, they're technically just doing it inside Docker, right? So what's the security
Yes.
risk here? Like I thought it was inside container and they cannot escape the container. So I thought we were safe. So what's the security risk here?
Thank you for pointing that out. That's absolutely true. If it's inside a Docker, it would be impossible to privilege escalate or change it into another user. However, you mentioned it was a bank, so I think that even if that services are really important in terms of bank, and I believe this is used by normal users, and if a command injection is still possible, like an attacker could upload a malicious PHP that uses up all the resources using like an infinite loop, and this could bring a denial of service, and I think that will be really critical to the bank's environment. So we recommend that you still fix this vulnerability as soon as possible.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right. I think I'm good. Groot, do you have any questions?
Hi. So, yeah, nothing much. I think it's pretty good brief, but I just have a question about the user itself. So you got the shell as a data, but yeah, what I'm a little surprised is that it should, write to some like critical paths and folders, and it can even modify files and stuff like that. So wouldn't that be more like a permission issue of the user itself? Like, can we just restrict permissions for that data user? Because like we're just so lazy to change the code, fix the code. So what do you reckon?
Right. I mean, that could be a feasible option if you limited all the accesses, but I think that is kind of limiting because you would first have to understand what kind of user user privileges the data has, and you would have to restrict all of that. And I believe that restricting data to the data could possibly take down the server of this website. So I don't think that is a very optimal solution if you want a good user and firm interaction.
Okay. Is this compromised host ever, like, how critical is compromised host? Like, can you actually reach some critical data through this host, or I don't know, like, I'm not a developer who built this, but
Oh, okay.
yeah,
So,
can you give me an example, like what you can do with this?
sure. As your colleague Choi mentioned, this is a Docker environment, so I guess privilege escalation is not possible. However, we were able to view the etc password file, and if this was an old Linux configuration, this would have the hash files. But I think that this isn't like an old server, so I don't think that's a problem. But if it had the hashes in, we might be able to crack the hashes. Or if this this data server was connected to other internal networks, we might be able to use tunneling or move laterally. So that might be a possibility. So it could lead to a compromise of the internal system, but we would have to dig a little bit deeper into that.
Right. Okay. Cool. Thank
Thank you.
오케이. 되게 잘하셨습니다. 이게 다음에는 순서를 바꿔봐야 될 수도 있겠네. 어쨌든 네, 광님 먼저 하고 그다음 폴님 하게. 어쨌든 굉장히 잘 답변해 주셨고